Welcome back to episode 2 of a new podcast in the AGI Podcast Network, AI and the Humans in the Loop. This podcast is here to bring light to a new kind of company and a new kind of employee that I think is very valuable in the artificial intelligence age ecosystem, which is people who may not have, and companies who may not be tech companies by nature, people who may not have developer or software engineer training, but they have leaned into this large language models and completely understand how that to leverage their superpowers, how to watch out for the things that they still aren't really good at, that kind of jagged development, and companies who are understanding that you cannot just throw a $20 ChatGPT seat at all your employees and think that that's going to solve this AI problem. And that brings me to my guest today, who I'm so excited to have, Adam Staples, who approached me. I now work with Adam at Chakra AI Solutions, and he's going to get into what all that is. But that was one of the first pitches that Adam gave to me when we talked. Was I worked for this company where they thought buying everybody an AI seat was going to solve the AI problem, along with a little bit of training, and that's not really what happens. And so, man, did that resonate with me. And now my desk is right behind him. You can't see through him to see it, but yeah, that's my desk right there. And this is an exciting company, and this is going to be an exciting conversation. So with that, Adam, tell us a little bit more about yourself and about Chakra.
Thanks so much, Jason, for having me. Let's see, Chakra, right? What is the chakra? I get asked sometimes, right? It is the brainchild and output of a 25-year career up to this point in revenue operations that span through a lot of different types of industries. All of that was very valuable until I think about 2023, when AI started to creep on the scene. At that point, I started to realize, like you had said, that a company I worked with literally just threw licenses in the air and told us to go do the AI. I eventually did dive in, and I was hesitant, like many were at first. But then I was blown away by its ability to scale what I was already working on. My role at the time was VP of Customer Success Operations. That's a big fluffy title for the guy that has all the keys, right, to the different systems and processes that we were using to deliver $100 million a year leading SaaS software company. Being able to map what that company was doing at the time was a super valuable skill until those 2 years. When I did eventually dive into the AI, I was amazed at its ability to scale not just me, but because I could map the bones of everything else, it started to lift the entire workforce. And we started to have cross collaboration. And this was before the age of the technologies you're even talking about, where we could vibe code solutions, right? This was merely what I will often refer to as a tier 1 agent. And this is a Claude project, really, that's just been educated on all the aspects of the roles and teams and processes that a business has.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yeah, man, absolutely.
I know you realize this, but I don't know if the audience. So what you just said is you had the secret sauce that most white collar operations don't have, that allows them to deploy AI, which is you already had all the processes mapped out in your organization. And if you don't have that, it's very difficult for AI to figure out what that looks like, because essentially it doesn't process things the same way we do. In the software industry, it's easy for it to do in like software development, because that's prescribed processes that are universal across the entire industry. But in a business, that looks very different in each business. So I'm not surprised that you had early success, because you had the secret sauce that you needed to leverage AI.
Well, and to go back to the what is the chakra question, right? It's ultimately a methodology, right, that looks to be grounded in human behavioral practices. So what will people actually do, right? AI can draw up and you can dream up all kinds of processes, but if your team won't actually interact with them, you're going to be dead in the water, just like every other tech platform that's been failing for years. I think this is another aside, right, that I always kind of go back to. The problems we're having adopting AI today are no different than the same problems that we've had adopting technology for years, right? Like, how many CRM installations fail because the sales team won't engage in it?
Yeah.
Like, that's the exact same problem. And
Monday.com. I had this problem at an organization with Monday.com. It was more work than they wanted to put in on the front end, even though it would have saved them, even though it would have solved 3/4 of the problems that they claimed they were having on the back end.
well, if we dive into that example, right? Was the support at the top of the organization for Monday.com like hell or high water, we're going to take this?
No, it was
No, that's always the trick,
fraud.
right? Like, in an organization that wants to truly lean into like a CRM technology, the decision to purchase it probably came from a sales manager who has no control over the other groups that actually need to leverage the CRM. So even if that sales manager is successful in getting his own team and direct reports to use the tool's reach is still limited, right? If the guy at the top, however, sees the value and agrees on the result he seeks, right? Not that we're going to put in the CRM. What will the CRM provide us, right? If you were going to go on a diet, right, you would know what you weigh in the bathroom, and the scale is the result, right? Like, it didn't matter how many salads you ate that week. We're not counting salads. We're losing weight. And if eating salads didn't result in losing weight, something's busted, right? So I'm switching to analogies. I'm in the weave, right?
Come on, man. People love analogies.
But I think in that situation you were talking about, if the guy at the top understood the value that Monday.com was supposed to provide to them in the results, and he could actually see and measure it and action on it, people would adopt that tool.
Yeah,
And
he did have a good mindset, but I think the wrong one. And he did a lot of things for me. But his mindset was, I've tried this kind of thing before, and it never gets adopted. I'm willing to spend the $2,500 for the year for you to learn that lesson, rather than if I was sitting in his shoes, what I would have said was, what you're trying to deploy this to is a bunch of paramedics and peer recovery coaches. Monday.com is the wrong tool. You need a very simple Kanban based, uh, uh, same tool. What are those called? Workflow tool, right?
yep,
But Monday.com, like, I fell in love with it because it has so much potential functionality and different little sub tasks you can make, and who owns what and who does what, and it creates all these beautiful dashboards, when really something like Tabula or something like that might have gotten adopted because because the people who were complaining about not being able to see what other people were doing or knowing what was going on, they wanted a dashboard or a tool to be able to see that, but they weren't willing to invest a 40-hour week of hardcore learning and trial and education in order to do it, and they were never going to be. He wasn't wrong. Monday.com was going to fail, but there was a technology that existed that I think would have worked.
yep. Well, and I think and I'm looping us back, right, to what it is that Chakra actually does, right? And we've developed a proprietary mapping diagnostic. We call it business energy and clarity architecture, or BECA. Think of it like a map. This is something that allows us to map an organizational hierarchy, right? Both in direct reports and the general energy that people put into the business. So not how many widgets did they produce or how many hours did they work, right? What were they spending their energy, right, to try to influence, right? The time doesn't matter nearly as much as where they put their effort, right? Effort and time are not the same thing, right? Like, we should be finding the things that your best employees stress about each week. Where does their energy go, right? And this map in a single location will show you an area of your business. So say your sales team, right? The people involved, who reports to who, their energy as it flows from person to person, and ultimately, like a river, right, down into the actual processes that team has to take on.
Okay, so for you AI nerds out there, Basically, what he's saying is if you were to look at a transformer architecture or a neural network, we're mapping out the weights based on the parameters of the business. How is this parameter weighted towards this parameter, and how do they flow? And then he's probably going to get into the back propagation of how would this ideally flow basis, or how does it compared to how it currently flows, right? So
You're
go ahead.
exactly right. So the map will take how that energy flows, and it'll show where in your tech stack that energy ultimately resides. And from there, right, it's about how your tech stack integrates to what we call a Chakra Workbench. It is a Claude project, just like we are using ourselves, right? That just helps us organize ourselves around what we spend our energy on. And ultimately, this map, right, will show you across 7 different, what we call energy centers in your business, how the energy actually flows and how it flows through you, and ultimately what results you want that energy to produce. Now, it's very useful for us to have a map that humans can read and work off of. What we are striving to do is to teach our agent how to read and produce a living document, right? Version of this that all of the sudden everybody sees the systems and what we spend our energy on, what we plan to spend our energy on, right? A map leads us somewhere. So this thing, to your point, is not just what do we look like today, right? It's what do we want to look like in a year, right? I generally cap it at a year because in this day and age, you can go a long ways in 12 months.
So what I hear you
Um,
saying is we're mapping out the workflow, right? We're seeing what the current state is and how technology plugs into that current state. And then we're probably getting some KPIs, getting a desired outcome. And now we're
that's right.
starting to map out now how would it look to get the right AI agentic workflow. So to automate some of this work, what would this workflow look like if it was a human hybrid workflow? And how could it optimize towards that optimal state as we go along by leveraging that relationship between the humans and the agentic workflows?
Think about that one. Ask me that one more time, and I know
So
you'll have to edit that. I'm sorry.
no, we don't have to edit it because people probably need to hear it one more time. So, but what I'm hearing you saying, basically in lay terms, right, is we would come in, we would take a look at what are your current workflows. How does technology plug into those workflows? And then
Yes.
now that we have this new technology available, which most businesses are going to pick a foundation model in order to help them drive this. It's either going to be Gemini,
Yes.
Copilot, OpenAI, or Anthropic's Claude, right? If we were to leverage one of those foundation models inside of your business and get your humans optimally working alongside this agentic workflows, this automated workflows, how quickly and how highly could we optimize towards the state that you really desire to be in?
Well, I think, and this actually comes back to what we were talking about with your experience. It's how bought in are the people at the top,
Right.
right? Like, impossible is nothing almost anymore, right? With investment. The nice thing though about the BECA map and about our chakra approach is that we're actually designed so that you don't have to eat the elephant all at once, right? Most technology adoption approaches, right, force you to make the investment, the large investment, before you see value, right? I'm very intrigued by companies like Odoo or Acumatica that aim to replace your entire tech stack, right? Like that solves this problem in a different way. It increases jurisdiction. It doesn't guarantee clarity. Those companies would absolutely benefit from our methodology. I'm real curious how it is, but I can only imagine that it's immensely expensive. It's expensive to rip out one CRM and replace it. You're going to rip out your CRM, your ERP, your inventory, and 4 other systems we could draw out of a hat, right? Massively expensive. But they're solving the problem in a more expensive way. You have to make the big investment before you see the value of clarity. We flip that kind of paradigm over and say, create a map so you have clarity first, understand what you already have, how it even links. You would need that level of clarity to properly install either one of those giant tech stack problems. But all of those solutions are very much aimed at enterprise business.
Exactly. And that's what attracted me initially to Chakra. Not just that you and I align on what we think it requires to get good AI adoption and leverage AI, but the fact that most of the people out there who are selling AI solutions are aimed at enterprise and they're not affordable. I came across this in the healthcare company that I worked for when they said, what would it take to become an AI completely infused, AI native healthcare company? And after 3 months of research, I basically had to come back and say nothing that we could afford as a 30-person company. Like, IU Health, I could tell you how they can do it. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of it, but it would be super expensive. It's essentially what you're talking about, which is moving everything into a neo cloud environment and having it all
It's
inside.
years.
Right. Yeah, and just moving the data from all your third party software into either a single software or a software environment that it can run in a secured environment. Like, all that is super expensive. What I love about the approach that we have, right, is once people have kind of mapped that out and looked at, okay, an affordable way to do this chunk by chunk is to leverage one of these foundation model companies which have plugins, right? So their technology can plug into our technology. If we have an enterprise level license with any of these companies, then we can get a BAA that protects all of our data. The place that we're not stopping, that I see a lot of other organizations who even take it this far stopping, is it's not, okay, you decided that this is where AI could improve your processes. You've decided that Anthropic is the AI that you want to do it for. We're going to charge you $5,000 a day for a week workshop on how to do this, and then you're going to deploy licenses, and we're going to walk away. Right. The part that I'm excited about working on is, why don't we help you develop some of these interior projects and agentic workflows that are going to make adoption much easier for your employees, so your marketing person doesn't just open up their Anthropic thing and say, well, okay, what do I do? Do I just ask it to write a social media post? No, we've already helped them develop a tone, brand, and style guide inside of a project. And they ask this project, what should we do? And it says, where would you like to start? Do you want to start with your social media marketing? Here's what I see is your company's vision and your company's mission and values. Do you want me to do some research on where you're effective on social media? Or do you want me to start by just A/B testing some different social media campaigns? Like, there's no reason why you cannot pre-structure any of those foundation models in order to walk employees through it at that level. And once they get their feet underneath them, then they're going to be like, oh, I wonder if I could do this. And maybe that won't have been pre-developed, but they will have started asking the right questions.
You're dead on, man. I actually think we're less about the solutions that we deliver, and will be way more about the coaching.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we want to stay in place with you, but we strongly believe, right, that the best consulting is medicine, not diet. Right? Like, the traditional consulting companies, and I think this is going to be the paradigm that's changing. I don't think we're going to be that different from a lot of people outside of our ability to give clarity quickly through our deliverable system. Dang it, I'm going to lose my train of thought. Sorry,
The
Jason.
difference between us and those other consulting systems is we're going to stay there to help you through.
That's right. We want to scale you into the technology, not the technology into you. Right. So our goal for you is probably early on, right? You're going to have a larger coaching package because we're going to spend more time with your teams, but we're developing human behavior science backed adoption strategies. We think that they can be crafted by the vertical in which we're supporting and servicing. Right. So you're going to have perhaps more right-leaning political attitudes about AI in a lawn care company, right? And you might have a more left-leaning demographic in a law firm, right? So understanding who is adopting, right, is every bit as important as what they're adopting. And I think that that's the difference. And then our goal for Chakra customers is to actually scale you away from us. If we've built your Chakra Workbench or that Claude project, and this is an important segue, Jason, you said earlier, right, that they might pick one of the major models. It's an important piece here that Chakra is kind of tech agnostic.
Yeah.
We believe methodology travels, and it won't matter where the tech market goes. Knowing who and what you are as a business will always be paramount to you being successful. It doesn't matter, right, where the tech goes. It can never fully guess all of the complexities that a real human organization or tribe, right, actually contains. I don't believe that AI will ever get truly to that level or understand human context and experience. If it does, right, a Terminator may walk in here.
Yeah, I was thinking, and it will require
That's the last bastion.
it will require embodied AI to get to that level, definitely. But staying with where we are with the technology currently, like a couple of the things that you just touched on, I think are really relevant to this conversation of the new workforce, right? So before we got on here, we talked about two things, and both of them touch on what you were just talking about. One was recruiting talent, and so I do want to give a shout out to knowing what you know and what you don't know, and humility, and just I like your approach. So we are tech agnostic, right? We also understand that if we come across a business who wants to download an open source model and build their entire agent stack and data stuff like natively, that will require either subcontracting or bringing on software engineers and data engineers, and we're not afraid of that. We understand how to what level we can work for your company, and we're more than happy to bring on the next level of technical engineers as those builds get harder and harder. I don't think most businesses are going to want to go that deep. I think most of them are going to want to sit in a foundation model. That's why people have stayed with Microsoft forever. One, because it's safe, and two, because it's out of the box ready for them, right? Even though if you try to develop in Microsoft and you're not a Microsoft developer, it's a major pain in the ass. But nobody pushes it that far because nobody wants to put that much work into their system. And that's what I think the foundation models offer companies, whether they go with Anthropic or they go with Gemini or they go with OpenAI or they go with Microsoft. You're going to have a lot of out-of-the-box solutions that develop along with the industry that they're going to improve.
That's what I was going to say. The change in experience will be subtle.
Yeah.
They won't even realize they're adopting things that aren't Claude.
Yeah.
Right. Or aren't their workbench, because if our coaches are doing the right jobs, right, we're helping them and we're monitoring for them the functionalities that might come out of a HubSpot, right? HubSpot released this new something or other, right? And we almost get to this orchestration level, right? Where we're I get into analogies, right? I think of an AI administrator should feel like a wizard, right, on their seat, but they can't produce their magic without the wand. And the wand is the workbench, right? It is the system that knows everybody and what they're working on and all of our data. And you can do absolute magic if you understand how everyone's connected and what they spend their energy on.
Let's take this into a side conversation here. Okay, because of something else you just brought up that reminds me of this whole vibe coding thing and where we're at with it. So Cloudflare has working agents inside of it, right? And I often use Codex as my kind of driver. That I've found that to be my favorite Jarvis type tool to help orchestrate other things on my computer. And I had mentioned Cloudflare's agents, worker agents, to Codex, and I think that these foundation models are tuned to try to keep you working with them, right? Which, as an individual, is frustrating, right? As a company, that's actually a good thing because, again, we're going back to it all kind of comes out. It makes it more easy for your employees because whichever foundation model you build your main project out of is going to try to help your employees do everything. They won't have to fully understand how HubSpot's agent works because Claude's agent will work with HubSpot's agent in the back end. and they won't have to. But I do want to tell you a story because I rarely have Chat GPT moments, and I had one last night. It was insane. So I am sitting here trying to upscale my database, or fix my database in my Mac so that it's scalable, because you have told me that if anything that I'm witch doctoring or experimenting on that isn't scalable and traceable is useless to the company. And that's good news. That's a good thing for me to keep in mind, and for every other vibe coder out there to keep in mind, right? So I'm sitting here working to do that, and I realize I got to go pick up my daughter from the babysitter 20 minutes away. It's almost 10 o'clock at night. I get 5 minutes from the babysitter's house, and I get a text message from my daughter saying the lady's going to be a half an hour late. And I'm thinking, that sucks. So A, this lady has no respect for the fact that I have a job too. B, back in the day, she would have been bringing my daughter home, and we won't even get into all that. But C, now it is going to be late enough when I get home that it's going to be just past the point where I'm motivated enough to work until 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to throw my hands up and go to bed and watch the last episode of Cape Fear. So I open my phone to the ChatGPT app, and I see the little automate button, and I think dispatch button, and I think, well, let's just see what it can do. So I push it, and I had left the Mac open with Google Caffeine, so I know it's still running, waiting on me to come back. And I'm like, hey, Codex, a buddy of mine today in a conversation that I recorded because I was at like a training mentioned an app that seems to eliminate the need to use Slack, because when we use Slack to get all of my agents together in my computer, I have to tell them every time I want them to go check Slack, or put them on a heartbeat and remember to turn them off of it, or they'll keep running forever. And my buddy mentioned this app that I thought maybe down the road I'll look at, and I kind of dismissed him. Go through that transcript, figure out what app that was, and see if you can open it up in the Mac remotely. And for the next 40 minutes while I sat there, it looked up the transcript, identified the tool, looked up the tool, realized that it would solve a problem that we have. I'm just watching the chain of thought thinking on my phone as it's doing all this, right? It's in the Mac, which is 20 minutes away from me physically, installs the software, decides it's going to test it just on itself in Claude Code before it brings any other agents in, runs that test. And when I sit back down 40 minutes later in front of the computer, it's 100% ready to deployed. And I am so excited that I no longer need to go to bed and watch Cape Fear, because I just saw my computer do a bunch of work while I was 20 minutes away from it. And it was
Felt like a wizard.
amazing.
We need to, Photoshop in a Merlin hat on you there and give up your
You tell me
is that a
that
beret?
level of
Is that a beret?
technology is not going to change the way we do business. For
What's that? I'm sorry?
people who are still out there saying this is just a stochastic
Oh
pair,
no.
it's not.
They've just not seen it applied to something they spend their energy on. I think it's that simple, that the things that actually stress them every day, they haven't allowed it to touch. It's handy when I need to figure out which dry cleaners are open late, right? That's not something you really care about. That's convenience.
No, you're 100% right. And I think this brings us back to something you said to me this morning that I love about working with you, which was like, how do we take what you and I and a couple other people have been developing over the last couple of weeks, and and for you, months, right? How do we take that to our now 10 to 12 person team as we get them together and turn it into a training experience where we're not just showing them what we expect of them, we're having them interact with the technology in a way that's going to empower them going forward, not only to understand the technology and the AI, but to want to use it because they understand it's going to make their life easier and their curiosity has been sparked.
Well, I think that's another segue and a shout out to the coaching method, right? What we're deploying there is human behavioral science. Let people do, right? One of the things that drove me nuts in my time in SaaS software was the insistence on enablement by lecture, right? And it's like, guys, come on. This is textbook stuff from like the 1940s that we know people learn differently. Why are we not using what we know about ourselves to our advantage? Like, that's idiocy. And I've never understood that. And I think that's a higher theme here, right? Is clarity, right? Like we should all be making decisions from a common understanding of what this business is here to accomplish and how it deploys its energies. Like that is the paradigm that this new technology really allows us to unlock. Before, even if you could answer those questions, you could not have scaled your human mind and your best people to actually think and work that way. We've tried. PMOs in big enterprise businesses were super prominent, and I'm sure that they still are, but they have been hacked to bits and this is going to be terrible for them or really good for the people that are creative or know how to get to somebody who can provide them clarity. And you scale those PMO professionals that could know in the past couldn't keep up. Well, if you're asking the right questions and you've got clarity now, they can. So we as a industry are prone to have a reawakening of muscle groups we've forgotten we've had, right? I'm on a riff here, man. I'm just going to go for a second.
Run with it.
CRMs allowed us to, when they became prominent in like what, I think around 2005, right? There were some old ones like Act and some crappy ones, but like Salesforce and that SaaS-based solution came forward. And they were sticky enough and their value proposition was good enough that leaders could force enough adoption that the tool stuck. And they felt like wizards, right? Because they could see their sales pipeline and they could predict how much pipeline they needed and where they needed to organize activity. Now, the reality was they still weren't probably very good at it yet because they still didn't really have a whole lot of clarity. But the value proposition of the software and the magic they felt like they had was strong enough that they started to let it dominate their decision making. So businesses essentially turned into like a weightlifter that only bench presses. You know that guy. You go to the gym, you're like, damn, bro, that's like, how many 45s is on that bar? And then you look at his legs and it looks like he would fall over in a windstorm.
Yep.
You know, he's real top heavy. Well, businesses are like that today. We've forgotten why we have a customer success organization, right? We think CSAT scores matter because Google tells us, but can we tie that back to actual results? The answer is yes, if you're operating from clarity today, but you've got to rediscover those muscle groups. You got to remember you have quadriceps and it isn't all about the pecs, right? The girls love the guns, sun's out, guns out, you know?
No, I mean, this so speaks to like every level of business to me, and some of the things that AI enables. One is, as a chief operating officer, chief finance officer, CEO, right? You can see all that. Like AI is great at taking all of the data being produced by all this third-party software, and if you have something like a clarity map, actually showing you where your problems are, where your barriers are, where your great successes are, what you should lean into, what you need to fix. That is awesome. From a guy who oftentimes, if I'm not if I'm not interested, I won't put a whole lot of effort into learning something side of thing, right? I will tell you, and just so that people have context, when I talk about the projects on my Mac, everything that I try to do, because I don't know how to write and read code, I do personal projects around my podcast and stuff on my Mac before I move it to something like somebody who's brought me onto their team to put it out in the industry, right? So it's kind of my experiment ground. And one of the things I did was I got HubSpot. I don't like CRMs. I was a development director. I use Salesforce. I think it is useless as far as the UX UI of it is horrible. Sorry, Salesforce, but that's how I feel. HubSpot, for developing a web, it's very complicated. You might as well be in Wix trying to develop a website if you're trying to navigate HubSpot, right?
So, Wix is out here catching strays.
Yeah, they are, right? Yeah, it works as well. So let me tell you what that looks like today as someone who leverages these tools. I have a Cloudflare hosting site for the two websites that I have. I publish a weekly newsletter. All of it is done through GitHub. I never get into any kind of website hosting tool. I use Claude Design to design what it's going to look like and produce it in HTML, push that to Claude Code or Codex, who then publishes it to GitHub and makes the changes on the website, then communicates with HubSpot, which I also never go into. And when it has built a mailing list for the 2 different newsletters that I have, and it drafts the newsletter, adds the thumbnail, and sends it out with my approval the next morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then if I get any emails in, the people who want to subscribe, I just open the browser extension in that Gmail and say, add these people to the CRM in HubSpot, and it's all seamless. Like, these tools, if they have value and you don't like navigating them, if you lean into AI enough, you shouldn't have to. You should be able to use a Jarvis. And I keep going back to comics, right? But Jarvis is the closest thing to what I can say we now have the ability to use, which is just a single interface with a chat bot that has agentic capabilities that can navigate all these third-party tools for us if we know what we want to accomplish, what good looks like, and how to orchestrate the data migration so that it knows enough about our company.
So you're exactly right, man. I think what you're hitting on is in the target industries that we think we are aimed at, we think they're notoriously underserved, right? Generally businesses between 10 and like 150 employees. But we fully expect that many of them won't even have the digital footprint needed to get themselves to a Chakra Workbench level, to like what you're talking about, where you have anything to integrate it to, right? But that is now easily solved. Before, right? And this kind of goes back to the idea that you no longer have the big cost barrier to lean into tech before you can feel its value. You could get a HubSpot starter account. I don't know if they have a free option. I
They do.
suspect they probably do.
Yep.
Right. And use your workbench, something that knows who you are. So what you described, right, is something that really worked without a BECA map or a clarity lens to put why you did what you did in perspective for everyone else, because you already knew it. When more humans come in, we do exactly what you would say, but you would put a lens in there that allowed the people that were not in the marketing agency or the marketing arm or energy center to appreciate why you were spending your energy the way you were. You would be able to connect what you were doing to how it impacted sales. And sales would know from the time you started the effort what you were trying to do.
Oh, and that is the biggest back channeling in any company I've been in. Like, what does John even do? I think he just sits
That's
in
right. It's political, man. Humans.
right? Yep.
Humans. Hubris at the leadership levels in businesses blinds us. This technology, if applied with clarity, get clarity, right? Vision, clear. Everybody will understand, right, what we're here to accomplish. For me, I always get this. I've had people tell me I say it backwards, and I switch it and I look it up. I really think it's a right brain lens on a left brain problem, where, if I'm saying that correctly, left brain is very analytical. Most leaders in different silos of business will have succeeded up to this point because that's what really mattered. What was black and white? Did you understand the right angles? What was mine versus yours, right? It was political, and they clawed their way to the top of those organizations. They've been successful. They trust their judgment. There is high hubris there in their understanding of the world. But each one of what we would say were 7 different typical leaders in business, right, doesn't understand the perspective of the others. And this creative, visual, color-coded map tool, right, breaks that worldview. It shatters it for just a second, and it makes the career marketer understand, right, why the types of leads they're insistent they're generating don't convert as much in sales as they should, right? And it opens up gaps, and all of a sudden, really smart people and leaders sit around a table and make a decision with clarity, with impact in mind, right? not the me sense and the I sense, and this means this for my silo. Get out of all of that and agree on what matters, right? And all of that would be really, really useful even without an agent sitting at the heart of it, right?
It's
That
it's read my
understands
mind.
all of that. And it is actively reflecting back into the business its energies all the time. And architected correctly and to the name of the show, right? If you keep humans in the loop, you will find that you are scaling your humans, and the systems and processes naturally scale with them. But you make the decisions you make to scale your people to produce results that are known from the beginning. Not we're going to count how many widgets we did, how many calls we put out last week. That's counting actions. You don't have to do that anymore. Like, we have vision. We can, it's our saying, right? Open your third eye and operate with clarity. Open your third eye, find clarity, what matters to you first, right? And then reverse engineer that to how you spend your energies to achieve that goal. And our map seeks to be, and Chakra seeks to be, we are not a software company, right? We are an AI consulting and adoption company. We seek to help customers understand the layer, right, between concept and practice, right? If they only make decisions based on concept, which is the traditional technology adoption path, they will falter because they are operating without clarity. That doesn't mean the whole project will fail. 40% of the organization will find enough value that we can socially engineer ourselves into saying that was successful and we'll keep it, right? No more. If you are doing this correctly, I think the sky is the limit. Now, you said this earlier, man. It'll come down to customers' appetites, but impossible is nothing,
Well,
right?
and what
And
you said was like you were reading my mind for a second. I'm going to interrupt because it's a
yeah,
podcast.
I
We
get
gotta
going.
keep
Come
it
get
back
me.
and forth. But one of the things that you said that reminded me of why I found AI to be extremely useful before agentic workflows were even possible was this translation tool. And we hear people talk about, well, I can turn it on and if I'm in Italy, I can translate Italian to English and back and forth. And like, yes, that's the obvious translation. I'm glad that ChatGPT speaks 70 languages. I rarely have to lean into that, but when I do, it's nice to have it there. The real translation tool that I find is different people who think different ways coming from different perspectives. It can help you each understand one another. And that is what I think you spoke to, that really giving that transparency and that clarity as to, again, I go back to working for someone who spoke at a almost master's or PhD level to a workforce of people who maybe had high school educations and often did not understand what was being asked of them. I could stick that in a notebook LM, the recording of that conversation, and say, now translate this down to something that is palatable to someone with a high school education. And beyond that, if I had helped them build a ChatGPT project that really knew them, they could take that and stick it in their ChatGPT project back. This is back pre-agentic, right? And it would say, this is exactly what's being asked of you. And it would say it to them in a way that they 100% understood. And if they had anything that they needed to give as positive or negative feedback, they could shoot that back and say, translate this back to what that guy would resonate with. I love the guy, but he was always reading leadership books and how he operated depending on what book he just read. So my secret sauce was, I would say, translate this into how Simon Sinek would say it in whatever book has just been read, and then it really hit home well.
That's pretty good. Can we we need to write an agent that follows everybody's like book I don't know, how do we even get books? I don't read I don't read enough. It's embarrassing to say that out loud. Through Amazon Prime, right? Can we look at what people have written and then what people have read and then design our marketing back to them in the language from their most read or commented commentary?
Their media ingestion. So
yes, I think that could be a thing.
Some of our marketing could be an Italian brain rot to the people who are on TikTok a little too much. That would be interesting to see the output of.
Super, super interesting.
I love it, man. So tell me, coming from a software company, coming from business background of 25 years, as you've watched, this is for the show because I want people out there who are non-developer background people, but who are really what I would call almost an LLM whisperer, people who understand how all these models work, how they work well together, what their weaknesses, what their strengths are, like how to help a business realize that they are of value. I want to help employers understand that these are people you should be bringing on to your teams. One, you may need more technical support to help them, but they work well together. And two, they are just of value. So what have you seen in the talent landscape as AI has progressed from November 2022 until now? With your background, what have your observations been?
Well, what I see, and this goes core to I think I want the way Chakra to operate, is that everybody's rushing to tell you what they know about AI. And right, like I'm getting this certification or that certification, and that's what's going to land me the job. No, it's the other way around. The paradigm has shifted. It's domain expertise. Um, I often, and throughout the pod here, I've used a lot of analogies, but you'll often hear me say, right, they promoted the best plumber to run the plumbing company. There are a lot of things more to running a plumbing company than unclogging crappers. Right? Like that guy doesn't understand inventory or personnel or HR or marketing. Like he's out of his zone. So what I want to happen for Chakra is I want to almost have a non-technical recruiter. Go find me the operations manager that's 38 that clawed their way up into the top of one of those silos and lost their job because of some misguided AI pilot. And they understand what this thing was trying to do. We'll teach them the AI. I'm not saying somebody shouldn't go get certified in it. You absolutely should do those things. But for me, the value is the domain expertise that we can scale up. I can go take the guy that used to be the best plumber and provide him a tool that tells him how marketing should work. And we can grow. You can nurture your employees up to what you used to have to rely on nature to provide. Right? In the past, we always had to, companies, right, were subject to the very nature of the employees they hired. So the quality of their output and their services provided were directly related to the motor and the skills and levels of educations and rigor and morality, right, of the employees they happen to hire. Not anymore. Now you can take less than perfect people and bring them up to the level. So go find the skills and the expertise that you actually want to go and service and use AI to fill in the blanks, not the other way around. Scale the person, right, first. And the companies that start to do that, right, first you scale the people that are your lowest performers. That's the low-hanging fruit, right? And then the companies that really want to advance, go find their best performers and figure out what they know, right? And then you use that to elevate everyone else's game, while at the same time teaching this person right here how to actually manage. This is the best plumber in the house, right? And this is how you scale your best people too. But to me, this technology, if applied correctly, is rising tide. It should bring us all up. It should not sink ships, right? It should scale people. And I believe that there is an absolute army of people who want to get behind a movement. They're looking for a banner in the ground that says, this is the right way to do this. This is the ethical and moral hill, is what I would call it, right? A human in the loop. Dang it, this is where we're going to fight. And I have other ideas. It's probably another show, right? And how do you plant that banner and what's on that banner? What does it mean to have a human in the loop? Right. And let's find a movement and a banner and create something that all of us are a part of, right? And move forward. That goes way beyond what Chakra is as a business, right? That's what I want Chakra to be at our core, like our ethos, right? Is something better.
Well, let's pull it that thread, because this show is that's what this is about, actually. Like those threads. That what is the human in the loop? So let me give an inverse perspective, because that's what I love about the fact that there's multiple approaches to AI. I'm going to give the inverse perspective, which is, I think, if you can find people who are curious, who are willing to be lifetime learners, who have the ability to communicate with other human beings that may not have subject matter expertise in marketing, sales, and all the rest of that, but they're damn good at using these tools, I can turn them into a workforce. I listened to an engineer on a podcast, not a software engineer, an engineer on a podcast say his job as an engineer is always to produce something that works him out of a job. And then he moves up to the next level, and then he moves up to the next level. And I think that businesses should be growing as they implement this, but the people that they're hiring should not be the same people. So the person who comes to clock in 9 to 5 and soft quits at 4 o'clock and knows their job real well, I can figure out how to replace them with AI. And somebody who's curious, who may have no subject matter domain experience with AI, can do the job of 3 of those guys. And eventually I can have a workforce that's growing my business exponentially and using the tools to learn the skills that they need for those domains as they go.
I don't disagree, but one of those is a lot more plentiful than the other.
That's true. That is
right. Like you're going to have a lot more fish in the barrel. But you're right, though. What you're saying is the soft skills and how to be a good human, right? Like those things are inherent in what make our best people our best people.
Yeah. So let me throw this at you while we go to a little dystopian, because this is my theory. I think that this technology is advancing way faster than people realize it is. And I think in the next 5 to 7 years, the 30% of the workforce that I just described, the people that get out of bed wanting to do something every day, wanting to learn something, they're just self-driven and that they're willing to work alongside others in order to get it done. That 30% of the workforce combined with AI will be able to do 99% of the work in the United States of America, and we will have to figure out what to do with the other 70%.
If you can get them to adopt it.
Yeah. That's
right. It comes back to that human behavior bit. Can we solve that problem? And I that's going to be one of the most important things here. And I think the real difference maker, I hope, for Chakra in the market.
So let me throw you an even more dystopian to it. I don't disagree. If you can reduce energy costs, if you can scale data centers, and if you can get humans to adopt it, my thought, as I start to see recursive self-improvement actually happening in these labs, is if you don't, it won't be a 30% human workforce, it will be a 10, and AI will still take care of everything else.
Maybe. That's a little depressing. I hope that, I think this is my thing, man. I think you could be right, but my hope is our movement, our banner that we want to plant, we can be the good guys at the table in that discussion. Or we can be a part of the good guys. And if we just quit or don't press, then we won't have a seat at the table. And I'm not saying that that's my seat, but it's somebody that we're going to meet in this journey, I suspect, or become affiliated with. And I'm humbled to be a part of the effort. It's kind of where I'm at with it, and humbled to have you on board and our whole team. And I'm super excited to see what the future brings.
Listen, Chakra is one of the ladders that we need to we have a choice as humanity right now for that future not to exist, right? But we need more people like you, more companies like Chakra who are willing to say, hey, everyday Joe, like we can approach this. I love what you always say, like you're trying to sell George Jetson's solution to the Flintstones, right? Who don't want Rosie the robot. There's a journey between Fred and Dino to adopting Rosie, right? And we want to help them along that journey so that they can become the Jetsons company of the future. But we don't want to expect them to be to for our Jetsons approach to resonate with them, because we're not going to come at them with that. We're going to meet them where they are and help them walk
Exactly right.
alongside them and level them up as we go. And that I think is the other mismatch here, is a lot of people people who are trying to get people who are AI even curious. They want to go at them with like, okay, boom, let's infuse it. Let's Jetsons you overnight, right? The technology may be moving at Jetson speed, but it doesn't matter, because humans are moving at evolutionary speed, at that caveman speed. And if we want them to be along for the journey, and we don't just want to see a bunch of robots and AI owned companies like Argentina is already doing, then we've got to meet people where they are and help them along that journey and make it a palatable and attainable journey for them.
100% attainable, I think, is a really big word. This isn't expensive, right? Especially our approach, right? Clarity first, is you get into too much in pricing, right? But under $10,000, right? Guaranteed, and as low as 2,500, right? It's AI assisted self discovery, right? We're benefiting from the speed at which this technology can help us do these things. And a traditional consulting firm would bill you hundreds of hours for the level of insight that you'll get now for under 10,000. Like it's really nuts. And then you start there and you'll be able to chunk out how much else you want to go for from there. So it is attainable. You can make a decision about where do I want to be in 90 days, right? And set a budget. And wouldn't you know it, we could probably, right? Like one of our agents will also help us decide how to best apply that budget, because you will know who you are because you're operating from a point of clarity.
All right, man.
We'll make better decisions.
We'll make better decisions together. We will be two of the humans in the loop as we move forward.
I love it.
Thanks for joining me today, Adam. I can't wait to see where this goes.
Thanks so much for having me, and we'll see you next time.
All right.